All right, today we are diving deep into VR chat. Now, you might have heard it called a sandbox of being, and it really is a place where the normal rules just don't apply. We're talking physics, biology, how we talk to each other, all of it. And with that kind of incredible freedom comes some of the most extreme human behavior you'll see anywhere online. We're going to look at the two very different faces of VR chat and figure out the psychological switch that lets both of them exist in the very same place. So yeah, let's get into it. So if you've heard anything about VR chat, it's probably this. A place of just pure chaos, right? You've got your cartoon frogs, anime characters, literal walking memes all crashing into each other in this big, absurd mess. And look, that reputation, it's built on tons of viral clips of just raw, unfiltered internet energy. For a lot of people, that's where the story ends. But then, there's this other side. For a whole different group of people, VR chat is the exact opposite of a hellscape. It's a sanctuary. For some, it's literally a lifeline. It's a place where all those social barriers we have in the real world just melt away. And it opens up a space for real, genuine connection for people who, honestly, need it the most. So, how can one place be both of these things at once, right? How can it be this totally unhinged circus and a deeply supportive, almost therapeutic community? It feels like a total paradox. But the answer, and it's a fascinating one, is all about a psychological principle that affects how every single one of us acts the moment we log on. Okay, so the key to unlocking this whole mystery is something called the online disinhibition effect. And it's this really powerful idea that being anonymous online doesn't just change what we do, it can fundamentally change who we are. So a psychologist named John Suler basically defined it as this. You know those psychological barriers that usually hold us back in real life? Online, they just loosen up. We feel less inhibited, right? We say things, we express ourselves way more openly. But here's the catch. This effect isn't a one-way street. It actually pushes us in two completely different directions. Okay, so on one hand, you've got what's called benign disinhibition. This is the good stuff. It's when people share really deep personal feelings or show incredible kindness or talk about fears they've never, ever admit to face. But then you have the flip side, toxic disinhibition. And yep, this is where you get the nasty comments, the harsh criticism, the harassment. So the really key thing to get here is that the exact same psychological force is behind both the incredibly positive and the deeply negative stuff. All right, so what is it about VR chat in particular that just cranks this effect all the way up to 11? Well, it turns out the platform is basically a perfect recipe of psychological factors, and they're all baked right into its DNA. Suler actually broke it down into 6 key factors that make this happen. Things like, being anonymous, not being physically visible, the fact that communication isn't always instant, how you can feel like you're in your own head, the whole it's just the game feeling, and how authority just kind of disappears. Now, VR chat is this powerful environment where a bunch of these are happening all at once, and we're about to see exactly how that works. And here's where it all clicks together inside VRC chat. Your avatar, that gives you dissociative anonymity. I mean, what you do as a giant talking taco has zero connection to your real-world identity. And yeah, you're not totally invisible, but you can't see those tiny facial reactions, which lowers the fear of being judged. The whole thing feels like a make-believe game, right? That's what Suttler calls dissociative imagination, and it makes having a serious talk feel way less risky. And of course, since everyone's just an avatar, things like fancy clothes or a powerful posture, those real-world authority cues, they're just gone. Put it all together, and these things massively reduce what you could call the social tax. You know that mental energy it costs to just be vulnerable with someone? But there's actually another layer to this that makes VR specifically so powerful. It's called the Proteus effect, and the idea here is wild. We don't just control our avatars, we start to become them. Seriously, if you're in an avatar that's tall and looks confident, you'll actually start to act and feel more confident. If your avatar is tiny and cute, you might find yourself acting a bit more shy.
And this creates this really intense feedback loop, because in VR, you see your avatar move when you move. Especially when you look in a virtual mirror, and VR chat has tons of them, your brain literally starts to accept that avatar as your body. It stops feeling like a puppet you're controlling and starts feeling like you. This deep connection just pours gasoline on the fire of the disinhibition effect. It amplifies whatever you're feeling, whether that's the courage to be kind and open up, or the boldness to be a real jerk.
So when you've got these incredibly powerful psychological forces all swirling around, it's really no surprise that the results in VR chat are so extreme. So let's look at the real-world consequences of all this. The good, the bad, and yeah, the ugly.
Let's start with the toxic side, because the fallout from disinhibition can be really severe. The platform has major struggles with sexual harassment, with misogyny, with what people call online firestorms, basically mob censorship. That same anonymity that lets someone be vulnerable is the exact same anonymity that provides cover for truly harmful behavior. And a lot of the time, this is happening in public worlds where kids can just wander in.
And this quote from a user really puts a fine point on it. Look, the freedom of VR chat means people can and do act in ways that would get them immediately thrown out of any physical public space. And that can create an environment that feels, frankly, really hostile and unsafe.
But then, you have the complete other side of the coin. For people dealing with things like social anxiety or even agoraphobia, VR chat is a place they can finally connect without being afraid. It's become an absolutely vital tool for transgender users to feel gender euphoria, to live as their authentic selves in a way that feels safe. It's a place where military veterans are finding support for combat trauma, and where people who are mute in real life can have these incredibly deep social lives, just using body language.
In this quote from a user, this just says everything about the life-changing impact it can have. For some people, it provides a kind of social connection that is literally impossible for them to get in the physical world. And it's not about replacing reality, it's about extending it in a way that makes life more livable.
So, when you put it all together, what's the final verdict? Is VR chat good or is it bad? The real answer is, it's neither. The platform itself isn't really the point. What's important is what it shows us about ourselves, about how surprisingly flexible our own identities can be. And this, I think, is the most mind-blowing insight from Suhler's work. This whole online disinhibition thing, it's not about taking off a mask to reveal your one single true self. It's more like it lets us explore different constellations of self that are already inside us. Think about it. The you at work is different from the you with your family, right? VR chat just gives us one more stage to let another one of those yous come out and play.
And this table just lays it all out so clearly. In the real world, your identity is pretty fixed. Social rules are strict, consequences are high. But in VR chat, identity is totally fluid. Personal space is flexible. That's how you get things like cuddle puddles. The physical risk is basically zero. Even something as basic as eye contact is different. It's simulated. It's not threatening. For some people, that makes VR chat almost like social training wheels.
So at the end of the day, VR chat isn't just a game. It's a kind of social laboratory, and it forces us to ask these massive questions about who we are. If you can be all these different versions of yourself in different places, which one is the real you? And as we all start spending more and more time in these virtual worlds, that whole idea of having one single stable self, that might be starting to fade away. And that's a question we're all going to have to figure out.